Okay, guys, we're going to talk about blood, lymph, and immune systems this week. Just a few quick housekeeping items. Too many of you are not completing all your assignments each week. And it doesn't matter to me, but I hope it matters to you as far as those things go, because some of you missed more than 20 points last week by not completing the quiz, not completing the mid-course feedback. These are easy points aside from the quiz. And when you fail to do them, you put yourself at jeopardy, you put your grade at jeopardy. So I hope that you guys will recommit to making sure you get everything done. The other thing I'll say is that as I review the quiz, there still are a lot of points being missed on the matching portion of the quiz each week. And I'm not sure how some of you are preparing for that, or some of you, how others are preparing for that. So we're going to use the Helpful Hints discussion board this week to discuss ways that we are preparing for the matching portion of the quiz. And see if we can help some people who are really struggling with that portion get over that little hurdle. So, like I said, a lot of you missed 10 points, which is equal to one quiz, by not completing mid-course feedback this last week. And so the last thing I'll say about this is make sure you, as you examine things, you put your priorities in place and you simplify those things that are distractions in your lives. Especially, I mean, this doesn't apply to everybody. Everybody's in this class for different reasons, but many of you are young students who are trying to get your feet on the ground, who are trying to better careers, who are doing things like that, and simply not completing assignments and then ending up with a poor grade in this class. As somebody who's been through a lot of schooling and been in a lot of competitive environments as far as schooling goes, that's not going to help you. So make sure that you're doing all the easy things, that you're prioritizing your time and your week correctly, so that those things, completing this course is not a problem. So with that said, let's jump into blood, right? Hemo or hemato, right? Hematology, right? That's the study of blood. So those are some combining force for blood. It's made up of connective tissue suspended in a solution. So you've got all these cells that are suspended in an aqueous solution, and the components of that connective tissue are red cells, which are erythrocytes, right? So erythro is red, and then cytes is a type of cell, right? And then you've got leukocytes, white cells, and you've got platelets, which are thrombocytes. So make sure you understand that there's the different kinds of cells are suspended in blood there. So how do blood cells mature and grow? Well, you end up with this stem cell, which people have talked to. This is a myeloid cell. It can become anything depending on growth factors that are imparted to it. And these are usually grown in the bone marrow. And then based on these growth factors, they either become myeloid stem cells, or they become lymphoid stem cells, and then those differentiate further as these growth factors get expressed to the cells, and you get these differentiated into the myeloid cells become red cells, they become thrombocytes, erythrocytes, or they become a form of white blood cell, which is a granulocyte, and these are eosinophils, basophils, and neutrophils. On the other side, you get lymphoid tissue, lymphoid cells, and these become lymphoblasts. This is where you get your acquired immunity from. You get B cells, T cells, and natural killer cells down that side. So that's kind of the things that we're talking about today. You know, red blood cells, these are your oxygen-carrying cells in the blood. They mature through a process through erythropoiesis, right? So this is a maturation of a red cell, right? This maturation of cell poiesis, right? They start out as erythroblasts. So blasts are young cells. Anytime you see blasts, those are young, immature cells. So erythroblasts go through a maturation process, and they carry hemoglobin. They carry oxygen because they have the hemoglobin structure inside of them. You can get diseases to these red cells, and you can see how they're concave on this electron microscope picture. That concavity is caused by that hemoglobin. When that concavity gets disrupted, you get things like sickle cell anemia, where the shape of the cell and the sickling, in that concavity is no longer there. They do not have a nucleus, right? So make sure you understand that the karyolysis, right? That's one form of destruction of a nucleus, right? They carry iron, which is sidero, right? So they could be called sideroblasts, right? So you got to know these combining forms just like every week, right? And then reticulocytes, these are immature red cells that still have nuclear material. So before they get rid of that nucleus, they're reticulocytes. So make sure you understand those terms as far as red blood cells. White cells, these are leukocytes, right? And then you've got these broken into granulocytes or agranulocytes. Anytime you have A on the front, that's a prefix, that means without. So without cells without granules is what we're saying. So these are your lymphocytes and your monocytes. And then you've got your granulocytes, right? And those go into your neutrophils, your basophils, and your eosinophils, right? They are right? Myelogenetic, and the other ones are lymphogenetic. So make sure you're understanding that immature B and T cells are lymphoblasts, right? And mature are lymphocytes. So some conditions of blood, of course, anemia is the big one we hear about. That's low blood, right? And there's different types of that. There's aplastic, right? So without the plasticity anemia. And then you've got sickle cell anemia, right? This has to do with the morphology, the sickling, what we call sickling of the cells, the shape of the cells, and myelodysplastic anemia, right? So something's wrong where the cells are made, the myelocells are made. There's a dysplastic condition causing anemia there. And then, so that's your circulatory system. Then you get into your lymphatic system. And that lymphatic system, again, is matter suspended in fluid, except for the fluid, instead of being called blood or hemo, is now called lymph, right? And lymph carries lymphocytes and monocytes suspended in this fluid. Now, other structures that are part of this circulates through a series of nodes and glands where we store some of these T cells and B cells. So make sure you understand, like, the spleen is part of this system. So you get spleno and splenic and splenomegaly, right? And then you've got your thymus and your tonsils, but glands are adeno, right? So make sure you're understanding that this is a good picture over here of the lymphatic system, that it drains this other fluid called lymph, and it goes through a series of nodes and glands, and then it re-enters back into circulation, right? And this happens in the left and right subclavian veins, all right? When bacteria and other foreign, xeno, right, is foreign, so you're probably going to get asked about that again this week. Enter the lymph, they swell, right? So this is where you get, you get enlargement of your tonsils, right? And enlargement of your lymph nodes, and sometimes you can feel that in your throat and underneath your chin, and you have them in your legs too, depending on where that infection is at. That's lymphadenopathy, right? So enlargement of the lymph glands, lymphadenopathy. That's what you're talking about there with enlargement of those. So the body has three defense systems. The first is keeping pathogens out. These are things like skin, mucous membranes, tear, saliva, gastric secretions. Those are all your first line treatment, and is very important because once we have a break in the skin, it's very easy to get an infection at that point, right? So the second line is innate defense, and this is phagocytosis and inflammation. So when things get in there, they start to swell, and that's your second line. And then the most complex is our acquired immunity system, and these are B cells, like I said, and T cells. They're myeloblasts, that's their origin, right? And they have a memory component. Now, AIDS affects this part of the system, your T helper cells. And so that's where AIDS becomes so traumatic for our bodies, because it affects our memory, immune system, and it really starts to shut the immune system down as far as that goes, right? So make sure you understand that part, okay? So that's kind of the overview of the lymphatic and blood. It's very brief. This is not anatomy and physiology class. This is terms, so pay special attention to the terms, but understand the basic anatomy, right? That blood is pumped from the heart, and that blood contains, certain structures, red cells and white cells and thrombocytes, which are platelets. And make sure you understand the anatomic terms, the medical terms that go along with those structures. So as for our spiritual thought, I was thinking about this weekend as I was studying, and I was reading again Ether 12 and Moroni 10:3-5, and I was thinking about in both of these, it talks about having real intent. It talks about faith and hope and charity, and then it talks about real intent. And I asked myself, what is real intent? Is, as far as learning goes, is real intent the guy or gal who gets up, looks at her scriptures for 10 or 15 minutes in the morning, puts them down, doesn't think about them the rest of the day? Didn't really, is that real intent? I think the intentions are good there, but I don't know if that's real intent. As I was thinking about that, I thought about what are some examples of real intent that I know. Certainly Joseph Smith had enough real intent and sincerity that his prayer brought about the first vision. But we look at the process of real intent with Joseph Smith, and we look at months and months, if not years, of studying the Bible, followed by question after question, thought-provoking questions that made him contemplate things, and then taking things to the right source of referring to the Bible, referring to those who he thought were in authority on the subject matter, and then finally, of course, going to the ultimate source of knowledge and truth, and that's to God in prayer. And so to me, that's real intent. The brother of Jared's another great example. Here's a guy who had a problem trying to get light in the boats for the ship, doesn't know how to do it. He's not an electrician, not an electrical engineer. All that stuff hasn't been invented yet. But he knows he needs lights in the boat. And if you read some background information, there's some history there of where he comes from, of having stones that illuminate. And so he has this idea, but doesn't know how to make it happen. But he does all the background work. He has faith, and he hopes, because of the faith and belief that he has in God, he hopes that he can do this. And though that faith and that hope, combined with that real intent and the work that he did, take him to the mount where he prays, and eventually he sees the finger of God. And his faith is so great at that point, he can't be withheld, and he sees all of God. So that's what I'm talking about, real intent. Now, here's some other examples. Harry believes he learned to sing. He applied himself to so many habits over his lifetime with real intent, and then included God in that process, and he's able to overcome all those things. So as I think about this, as students at Brigham Young University, Idaho, you need to ask yourselves, do I have real intent in my learning process? Do I do these things? Do I ask questions? Do I try to apply the material? If you do that things and go to the Lord, you'll be greatly blessed with increased knowledge and wisdom. Of that I bear witness, as we try to have real intent in the things in our lives that matter, whether that's school or whether that's other things that you have in your life. We should try to have real intent in those things that are truly of eternal significance. It will make our lives better. It will make the lives of those around us better. Have a wonderful week in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.